Liberty in our lifetimes in a free state of our own. That's the vision. That's the dream. And we are building it in New Hampshire. I'm Eric Brakey, your host and renegade statesman for the Porcupine Report. Welcome to your source for porcupine news and free-range conversation on matters of liberty. All right, let's hop into the show. Hey there, you porcupine, you. Welcome to episode 17 of the Porcupine Report. As always, I am your host, your renegade statesman, your executive director of the Free State Project, Eric Brakey. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. It's good to see you. I mean, that is if I could see you, but you could see me. So, or unless you're listening to the podcast, the audio version of the podcast, in case you can hear me. Anyway, whichever way you are receiving this show, whether it's on YouTube or one of the many social media platforms for the Free State Project, or on Spotify or your favorite podcasting app, we're so glad to have you with us here. And something that goes a long way to help the show on whatever platform you're on, like, subscribe, retweet, share, whatever is appropriate for your platform. It goes a long way to helping to get the word out about the show we're bringing to you every single Wednesday at 7 o'clock p.m. We're going to have a great show today. Our guest I'll be bringing up in a little bit is someone I've gotten to know during my time coming on board with the Free State Project. We'll be getting to him in a moment. First, I want to tell you, it's been a great week in the Free State. One thing I have been reflecting on was this past week, I got to join volunteers at one thing we do with the Free State Project is a monthly calling party where volunteers make calls to potential movers or people who've expressed interest in the Free State Project from across the country to check in with them on their journey, see if they're ready to make the move or if there's anything they need help with or any questions they have. Two stories really stood out to me. One, I called a guy in California, of all places. I get him on the phone, and wouldn't you know it, I called him right as he was in the middle of packing up his house and moving to New Hampshire. Anyway, he's going to be here later this month, and we're going to be getting a welcome wagon ready to greet him and help him unpack his U-Haul and move into his new home. So that was exciting, getting to talk to someone who is literally in process of making the move to New Hampshire right now. And another person I spoke with was someone who was excited, had a ticket to the Porcupine Freedom Festival, but was concerned that there were no tent sites available anymore. I will say there are RV sites still available. So he thought maybe he wasn't going to come, even though he had a ticket. He thought he couldn't get a tent site anymore. Well, we managed to hook him up with resources where people are oftentimes putting up and sharing their sites with others. You can sublet part of a site from someone if you reach out to the FSP community and you really want a tent site. I will say the RV sites are great too. Sometimes they cost a little bit more, but they come with electric hookup, and you can tent on an RV site if you don't have an RV. That's totally an option available to you. So there are still some sites available. And this guy who thought he wasn't going to be coming to PorcFest, I think now he's coming to PorcFest because he realized there's a big community out there that's ready and happy to find ways to make sure if you can't get a site that there are folks willing to share space. And in fact, I had to do that one year. One year I was late in getting my tickets to PorcFest, and I had to I was concerned I couldn't get a site. I just reached out to the community, and wouldn't you know it, none other than Matt and Terry Kibbe reached out and said I could stay on their site. That's the kind of awesome liberty community we have at PorcFest. If you've never experienced it, you're going to want to come and join us. So I guess I've seamlessly slipped into my my first promotion for the episode of PorcFest, which is, of course, this June 17th through the 23rd at Rogers Campground in beautiful Lancaster, New Hampshire. This is a family-friendly freedom festival. Ron Paul, who has by far the most requested speaker that everyone has been asking for, he's going to be speaking with us. Now he's coming in virtually. He's going to be zooming in over the interwebs to give a live conversation with us. We've got a giant, massive telescreen that he's gonna be larger than life at PorcFest, and because it is live, there will be opportunities for question and answer. So if you have ever had a question for Ron Paul it's been burning in your heart for decades, that you wanted to ask this question of him, you'll have the opportunity at the Porcupine Freedom Festival. So don't miss out there. But of course, Ron Paul is not the only one joining us. 2,000 of your favorite libertarians are going to be there camping with us in Lancaster. That includes folks like Spike Cohen, Jack Hunter, Gene Epstein, Jeffrey Tucker, James Bovard, David Friedman, and so many more, including tonight's guest, Dennis Pratt. This is not to be missed, so bring your friends, bring your family, and reserve your campsite while supplies last. As I noted, we still have some RV sites available. Grab your tickets at porcfest.com before they sell out. All right. I really hope to see you there, everyone. So I want to welcome to the show our guest. First, we're bringing him on screen right now, but let me introduce him a little bit. It's good to see you, Dennis. Dennis has been, speaking of PorcFest, when I think of PorcFest, Dennis Pratt is one of the first people I think of, because he was the lead producer on PorcFest for 3 years, but he has been a leader in the production of PorcFest for 5 years total, though he's retired from that role, and we'll see how he's enjoying retirement. He'll be at PorcFest all the same, but maybe a little less stressed out without the burden of leadership on his shoulders. He is also the owner and operator of the Independence Inn in Stratford, New Hampshire. We'll talk a little bit about that. And he's been a libertarian for 43 years. Wow. Your humble host is 35 years old. Dennis Pratt is a libertarian for 43 years. So maybe there's a thing or two this young whippersnapper can learn from him. We all come to libertarianism from different paths. I'm a recovering neoconservative. I'm ashamed to admit it, but it's important to understand where we all come from. We all are on different journeys to arrive in this place of liberty. But Dennis came from the left. So maybe we'll talk a little bit about his journey. Dennis, welcome to the Porcupine Report. It's great to see you, my friend.
Thank you, Eric, for having me on.
Well, it's a pleasure. I know we've had so many conversations already. You've been such a wealth of wisdom and experience as I've been navigating this new role that I'm in. And I know whenever we talk, we can talk for hours at a time. So we're gonna condense this to a single hour today. But then I'm sure we'll probably be talking about something we'll want to keep talking about. And some point we'll go offline. We'll pick up that conversation like we never stopped. But Dennis, well, I guess let's get started. As you mentioned, you've been a libertarian for 43 years. You came from the left. You are one of the most prolific on social media proponents and advocates and thinkers on the Free State mission. What was your personal journey? And I guess in the Reader's Digest version, your personal journey from the left to liberty. How'd you get here?
Yeah, so I come from the left. About a third of us do. Maybe in the Free State we're more like a quarter that come from the left. But I have to say that a lot of the people who come from the left tend to be a little bit more driven, a little bit more hard on libertarian ethics, and that's really kind of where I came from. I was working for an arch conservative, and fortunately, both of us were very interested in philosophy, in understanding what we were doing, and in being consistent. And so I didn't know anything about libertarianism. I didn't know anything about the philosophy of freedom. And neither did he really. But over about a year, it was really more like 9-10 months, but in a startup situation where we were working 7 days a week. And we would basically debate at various breaks. And we derived something that, by the end of the period of time, he backed off on on issues around self-ownership and issues around foreign wars. I backed off on economics, which was not an area that I kind of understood. And by the end of probably about 9-10 months, I was looking for a break. I wanted to argue with him, and I couldn't think of any policy issues. And I finally said, is that it? Are we totally agreed? And about an hour or so later, he couldn't think of any either. And so we thought we had invented something new. I found out about libertarianism on a Chicago bus in the middle of winter. There was a leaflet floating in the snow in the bus that was going back and forth down the aisle, and I was reading it upside down. And I picked it up, and it was dripping wet, and I jumped out of the bus and found a payphone on the loop, and I called up my friend. I said, I know what we are. There's a word for what we are. And I looked at it, and I go, libertarians. But so I subscribed to Reason magazine, subscribed to Cato. Eventually by the way, I think it was 84, Ron Paul's 84 campaign. I actually contributed to that. So I was fairly early on Ron Paul, although I voted against him in 88 in the Libertarian Party nomination.
I'd love to ask you, because I know that today you have a dog named Ron Paw. So obviously you're a fan of Dr. Paul. I remember reading a book on it was Brian Doherty's book on kind of the history of the Ron Paul movement. And I didn't realize, going back to that 1988 campaign, he ran for president under the Libertarian Party nomination. It was a very contested primary, it sounded like, between, I guess, some of the more left-wing libertarians and Ron being perceived as more of a right-wing libertarian. I didn't realize how contentious it was. Since I have someone here who was there for that history, I just have to ask, out of my own personal curiosity, what was that race like?
Yeah, it's actually interesting. We have a few people here from that actual battle. We were all on the feather side, though. So we're the OGs in the Free State movement. But yeah, the battle was really between Ron Paul, who was arguing on a fiscal basis, a monetary basis, the Austrian, end the Fed, that type of thing, and the Russell Means side, who was arguing more on a personal freedom. The government is doing to Americans what it did to the American Indians. Russell Means was a leader of the American Indian movement and had been at Wounded Knee during the government massacre there. And so he spoke to me, coming from the left, of, look, we're doing horrible things to human beings. By then I had, I returned, done graduate work at Northwestern, graduate work at MIT in business and in economics. I was actually, the same area as Krugman was at the time. And so I understood the economics really well, super well, but it bored the heck out of me. What really speaks to my heart is this vision of liberty and what it does for people, especially the downtrodden people, the people who are being screwed over. And Ron Paul didn't give, I shouldn't say that he didn't care. He cared, but he couldn't articulate that. That wasn't his central theme. And so I actually had I was stupid enough to try to muscle him before the first ballot. We were coming in from Massachusetts, and I basically met with him in a back room, saying, "Hey, you're going to lose Massachusetts if you don't change your rhetoric. You got to start talking a little bit about the little people, about blacks and the poor, and what liberty does for these people, because." Nobody gives a damn about end the Fed. I was wrong about that. But, it's an argument that really kind of falls more for wonks as opposed to people who lead with their hearts. And
Well,
when I became libertarian, I actually thought that, we had discovered something new. It gave us everything that the socialists wanted. And we didn't really even have to fight over it. It actually was this beautiful thing where we could just have whatever we wanted, as long as we just leave each other be. I was going, oh darn. And I just thought I would just communicate this to all my socialist friends. I was actually a leader at the time, and they would see it too. And we'd have this large movement from the left going into libertarianism. That never really happened. But yeah, I still, by 88, I was still believing that there was a message that could reach to the left, given what their nominal goals are, that would actually touch their hearts and say, yeah, I see this. I see this is not just this is the more ethical way of doing it, and it gives us more of what we want more assuredly. And so that was the Feather Caucus around Russell Means. Of course, we lost. Ron Paul won, and I was more than happy to support him. I just thought it was a boring message.
Do you think that, of course, the Ron Paul that I came of political age with is a Ron Paul who talked about the war on drugs and focused on an anti-war message, and also ending the Federal Reserve. And I certainly remember, some of the moments that were the most striking with Ron were talking about, his compassion for the soldier who's being unjustly sent off into these wars, or the injustice of the war on drugs and the persecution of kind of poor communities and racial minorities under the war of drugs. Do you think that was an evolution of his message from the 1980s? Do you think that he came to speak more to those things that you were concerned he didn't speak to in 1988? Or do you still think that he never quite had that focus that you longed for in the 80s?
Yeah, it's just not where his focus is, and I don't think he's changed all that much. I mean, he yelled at me in our meeting because he, it's funny because we're into this identitarian warfare now.
Yeah.
But the identitarian warfare was occurring in the 80s. And as a matter of fact, I was big into marketing strategy. That's my area, is the design of new products in emerging industries. And that's what I studied at MIT. That's what I researched in a research lab. And that's what I practice in an incubator. And so for me, market segmentation, which is, you can kind of think of it as identitarian. Market segmentation is just natural. It's just it's how I think, right? There's two aspects that I'm concerned with. I'm interested in market segmentation and specializing the product to hit the target market. So to him, I said, why are you not talking about the blacks and the poor and the women and you're not communicating these things, and you're not communicating them hard. And he was like, libertarianism isn't about collective rights, group rights. It's about human rights. And so he made that argument, and of course I agree with him. It's just, as a marketer and somebody who's interested in these other segments, I wanted him to stress it for those segments. It's interesting though that we kind of lose segmentation as a value, as a critical marketing strategy component in our knee-jerk reaction to the collectivization of humanity by the left. So,
all right. So, at what point in your libertarian journey did you come and join the Free State movement?
Yeah, so one of my old socialist friends contacted me in, I think it was '02 or '03, and just to say, hey, did you see what's happening north of you in New Hampshire? Now, he was a socialist, and by that time I had just kind of totally disregarded all my socialist friends talking about libertarianism, because they weren't listening to me. They didn't seem to understand. I could not communicate to them. And so I disregarded that. But by 2011, they were making enough noise up north. My wife wasn't there for a birthday party for my birthday. My birthday's always on Pork Fest. She said, well, why, I'm going to go off and do this other thing. Why don't you go and do something that you want to do? And so I said, I've always wondered what's going on in New Hampshire. So I'll just go up for the day. I'll just drive up for the day and visit and just see what this Pork Fest thing is. And I went up there, and I have to say it was a culture shock to me, because I had spent by that point 1, 2, 3 decades arguing, proselytizing about libertarianism. And most of the time, I couldn't even get people to agree that we own our own bodies. I would try to get you start at ethics 101. Do you own your body? Is that something that you own, or do you have a superior master owning that? And I couldn't even get people to agree to that. And so it was just so painful, so time consuming, and so despairing. And then I walked into Pork Fest, and everyone was already talking up here. And I was like, wait, I don't have to like start at ground zero. It was such a relief. I called my wife that night. I said, hey, I said I was going to come home, and I'm going to spend another day. And the next day I call up my wife again. Yeah, I said I was coming home, but I'm going to stay one more day, honey. And I stayed the whole time. And I went back.
What year was that?
That was 2011.
Okay. So that was 1 year before my first Pork Fest. So, all right.
Right. Well, I remember your Pork Fest because it's all Ron Paul everywhere.
Oh yeah.
And I just loved it. I loved being in a place where I wasn't considered evil for what I consider to be the greatest good possible. Right. I don't believe that you can be a good man by doing good acts if you believe in violating other humans' self-ownership. I believe that once you start treating someone as a slave, you are in the area of evil. Yeah. Now you can ameliorate that, and you can, pet the puppy and give alms to the poor or whatever you want to do, but you're still being evil. And I think that, libertarian ethics sets out that minimum standard for don't be evil. Now, once you're there, there's a whole bunch of ways of being a better man or a worse man. And I totally agree with that. But, to me, that was really important. And I just, I was coming in. Remember, I was coming in from, I was born in New York State, New Jersey, Chicago for undergrad, and Boston for grad and for work. And these were places that you never saw a gun unless it was a cop. And I walked into Pork Fest, and I was going, oh my God, what have I walked into? And by the end, I was just so relaxed and felt so safe and so supported that it was a life-changing event for me in 2011. I didn't actually make my move. I think I signed in 2015, 2014, but I didn't make my move until 2018. And we moved up here. My wife really thought that we were buying a house just to kind of stay for maybe 1 weekend a month. We would stay in our house in Massachusetts. We kept our house in Massachusetts for another 2-3 years. Once I moved here, I just refused to cross the border again. I did cross the border, but it was really hard to get me over there. Every once in a while, my wife would trick me, or there'd be necessities that I'd have to cross the border. I do not like leaving the Free State. I'm leaving this week to go to DC, which is like that's like Mordor. That's like the place where all evil resides. It's too bad. I'm not pleased about going there, but I'm hoping to help save a few other libertarians who felt the despair. I mean, I felt real despair from about 95 to really 2008. I felt that libertarianism was impossible, would never actually be achieved. I'd been smacking my head in the wall by then for 15 years.
Yeah.
And standing out in the rain and trying. Oh man, I just was so I was looking at other ways of doing libertarianism, trying backdoor ways, basically homeschooling and alternative schooling. So I was starting up alternative schools and talking to parents about rescuing their child from the government schooling, because I thought that was kind of an initial evil. And the other thing I was doing was personal growth, because the personal growth community is kind of the left side of libertarianism. The personal growth is all about freeing one's own self from the stupid thoughts and things that you're in head that slow you down, that stop you, right? So and libertarianism is freeing yourself from all the external things. So to me, if you look at my symbol here, it's kind of a melding of the two together into a voluntarist state. Both the freedom, internal freedom of what I can do as a human being, and actualizing myself in the area that I'm strongest, and then being able to express that in the world without violence being used against me to stop me. So I see those two as really important. So I was looking at different avenues to try to get this in, because I wasn't convinced that proselytizing, that conversion was something that was feasible. By the time I moved up here, though, I kind of understood the concentration strategy. I was writing at the time for Quora. I wrote almost 2,000 articles on libertarian ethics, but I have probably the best taxonomy of all the different strategies that have been tried over time. Almost all of them have failed, but try to achieve a liberty society. Almost all of them have failed. Free state is one of the few, and it's one of in that category called concentration strategy. It's one of the few that's actually succeeding, and it drives me nuts that people keep working really hard the strategies that have failed over multiple decades. And they're so egotistical. They think, well, I can make this work. I'll go, but we've had tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people try that, and you think that you could do, oh well, it's they didn't understand this one little thing. And I go, oh, God bless you. Good luck, man.
Dennis, to illustrate your point, because we were talking about this the other day on the phone. I think I can fairly say, not to toot my own horn, but I suppose I am a little bit, that as far as political success, as far as policy change and getting elected to offices, I'm one of the more successful libertarians in the country as far as that goes. In my own person, I ran for office three times for the state legislature, one passed constitutional carry, a number of medical cannabis reforms, a whole bunch of other things. And it seemed like where I would focus on an issue, I could make change there. And yet all around me, wherever I wasn't focusing in the state of Maine, it was like death. Liberty was dying a death by a million cuts.
Yeah.
I could not, as the one Liberty senator in the state Senate, I could not stop every single thing that was coming. I only have so much time, so much energy, so much focus. And one person alone, and not to say I was totally alone. There were good people in the House. There were a lot of great grassroots people around the state, but not the numbers, not the concentration like exists in the state of New Hampshire. And it seems like in New Hampshire, the opposite is of what I experienced in Maine is the case, is that it is statism that is dying a death by a million cuts, because there are so many people committed to this liberty project who, with all of their doing different approaches and with different focuses on different issues, you don't have to feel like you got the weight of the whole liberty movement on your shoulders as you advance liberty, because there's such a great community, a great network in place of people independently pursuing their own human action in these efforts. I suppose, what do you have to say about, do you think that's a fair picture of the Free State, and what would you, I guess, what do you have to say about all of these different liberty communities that we've been building in New Hampshire?
Yeah, so I mean, you're absolutely right. Concentration strategy allows us to do so much more. Before it was always on my shoulders, and I'd have to go and study this topic and that topic and this topic, and so politically, it's just amazing. I've been working on my normal area when I was in the authoritarian 49, which is what I call the rest of the states. When I was in the authoritarian 49 was licensing, because, again, remember, I'm coming from the left, and to me, the licensing is one of those cruel things we do to the underclass to prevent them from being able to rise up. Right? Yeah. We give these crony handouts to people to prevent competition, to prevent people from moving in, and they actually, they were literally used initially in order to keep these people out. Now it's to protect the consumers, right? So
That's what they
so
say
it's,
anyway.
It's one of those areas that just so angers me. So I come up here, I'm going, hey guys, I got all these portfolios of all these issues that I've worked on, but the biggest one is licensing. I'm all set, and I come here, and there's all groups around licensing. I go, all right. So I actually worked on another area, which was the right to die. I have cancer. I'm at an age now where I see people who are dying from various ways, and one of the great fears is that you're out of control. The state controls you at the time of your death. They control your body, and they take your body and tell you what you can and can't do with it. And that outrages me as an ethicist, and so I saw that as being an area that no one else was picking up. And so I worked on that. I've worked on that for about 4 years, last 4 years. That's my political. I'm not particularly political, but that's been my political contribution. I've made gigantic gains in that. We actually finally got a bill through the House. We got it through the judiciary. We won that one. I think it was 12 to 7. And then we got it through the House itself, 176 by 173. That's close, but that's kind of the power that we have here. And I was working primarily with Democrats. The Democrats and the Republicans kind of toss, the liberty people. We're the deciding factor there, and so we work on liberty. And so if the liberty's in one side, we're going to work on that side. The liberty's on the other side, we're going to work on that side. Right. And so we're
not for right-wing liberty or left-wing liberty. We're for liberty.
We're for liberty. That's right. And so, but it was so funny because when I joined this one group, that's a coalition of, ministers and disabled and this and that. It's a very large group, but they're all leftist. And they didn't quite understand me. When I first got on, they were very antagonistic. You think this, and slowly but surely they were going, yeah, that's right, Dennis, you're so right. Because I was talking about ethics and as a matter of fact, we called the bill for a while "Live Free, Die Free" bill. That actually ended because the people we brought in at the very end, the real politicos, they were still embroiled in this battle of left versus right, and that sounded too right to them. But yeah, so while I'm working on that, though,
they just want people to die free. They don't want people to live free. So while I'm working on that, there's all these other groups and people working on other areas, and I'm like, I'm working fierce. I look up, oh my goodness, we got a new freedom there. Oh, we got a new freedom there. We got a new freedom. What Jeremy Kaufman says are these micro freedoms. These little things that sometimes they don't realize what the impact is. We passed a bill to free up microbrews in beer.
And it was late one night, and nobody thought it was matter. And we got the bill, and we passed it, and it blew up the entire restaurant industry in New Hampshire. All of a sudden, all this innovation that was squashed by the government. Like, oh, you have to have this size kettle, and you have to do this. All of a sudden that was off, and we had this explosion of microbrews and different flavors, and right still today, people do not realize that all we did was we released one of the constraints. Well, that's what we're doing. We have all these people releasing constraints and popping up freedom all in these different places, and it's showing up in just fantastic areas. But what I want to say is that you are a political guy. Politics is just one tiny area of the free state that we're actually advancing. And it's hard to know, because in the authoritarian 49, you really only care about the political side because you have no community. Here we have so many community activities and networking and building up parallel institutions that are just going on constantly. One of the big things I do is build community liberty houses, community houses.
Yeah, the clubhouse
all around the states. I think we're up to 6 or 7 now, with plans for additional ones. And we have events there, debates and discussions, and videos and documentaries. We have parties, and it's just fantastic. People don't understand this. It's hard to be a libertarian and to know what the free state's like, because they go, geez, I'm totally alone in the authoritarian 49. I have these friends who would actually, turn me over to the police if the police dictated some sort of new law or something. And I don't want to leave them. I just, I'll be so alone in the free state. And we have hundreds of groups here, and so they come here, and all of a sudden they're kind of in like this, oh my goodness, oh, I could belong to this group. I can do this. I can do that activity. And I was talking to a guy yesterday at a potluck that we have at the Shell, which is one of our community clubhouses. And he was going, I see all these groups, but we don't have a group that plays basketball. Why do we do that? And I was going, well, create it. We there was a guy sitting at the table. I said, look, he created a group, I think 3 months ago, for rucking. Rucking, which is doing a heavy sack and stuff like that.
Yeah, he'd invited me to join them. I haven't had the chance yet, though.
I think he's expecting you to come out to the seacoast and do that.
Well, I would like to.
But he now has a group that meets regularly. They do 15 people, 20 people. Once a month they do a pickup ruck. So they go with their rucks, but they also are picking stuff up. And he went out to the towns and he said, hey, we're doing this. And they were so ecstatic that, they gave him bags, and he said, no, just drop the bags on the in the street, and we'll have, our people pick them up. And so, this guy, yesterday he was like going, who plays basketball? And of course there was one person here who played basketball in high school, and he goes, but no one seems to. I go, well, just create a group, and before you know it, you're going to have people coming, and who knows, you'll have leagues, and the stitch and bitch ladies. I always use them. That started really with somebody who liked to knit. And would just kind of knit. She brought it to a Pork Fest one year, created a little hub, and every noon, you can do that this year too, but every noon the women would get together. It was mostly women, and they would bring crafts of some sort, stitching or knitting or painting or other things, and they would just kind of sit around and talk while they're doing it, and they called it Stitch and Bitch. Well, that's become like this super popular thing that they do on a regular basis. And it's this kind of generation. Now, is it political? I don't know. But it's free state people doing stuff together. Now, out of that will come parenting issues. Out of that will come schooling issues. Out of that will come additional groups because they go, we need to fix this. And the idea is always when they say we need to fix this, it's okay, what am I going to do to fix it? What we self-select in the Free State for people who are willing to pick up the mantle, to pick it up and say, okay, I'm going to lead here. This is an area that I want to lead. I did it with Live Free, Die Free. I did it with creating Liberty Clubhouses. I've done a number of things like that. I'm kind of a super entrepreneur, but we have a lot of people who do it in just teeny tiny little areas. Every single area matters. Every single area matters, because the next person who comes here to the Free State, it's going to go, geez, I play basketball. Is there a basketball group? I go, there's a basketball group over here. Join them.
I'll tell you, one thing I'm excited. Once I fully make the transition to New Hampshire, which has been a process for me. I'm recording this from my office in Maine right now, but I'm spending more and more time in New Hampshire as each week goes by, and by the end of the year, I'll be fully moved in. But one thing I gave up when I got involved in politics, because I just didn't have the time, the bandwidth for it, and the community for it, was my first love, which was theater. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, before I was in politics, I kind of had to be quiet about my politics in the theater, because of course it's not just left to center. It's far left to center. Maybe some of your socialist friends I might have done some shows with, but the moment I ran for office, now suddenly I feel a little weird going back to those spaces. Like, people are looking at me differently because I'm exposed as like not one of them. And then of course in COVID, it was just awful. Like the theater communities across talk about something, a community that needs to be able to meet in person, unmasked, and like with live audiences, and they just kind of bent over backwards.
You could have done that here, though. You could have done that here. We were meeting unmasked, large groups.
Well, that's partly what I'm excited to. I don't know what like the Free State theater scene is like, if there are any like Free State theater groups, but if not, like maybe that's something. Once I'm fully over there, I'll see who wants to get together and do something, or maybe we could put a production on at Pork Fest one year. I love the idea of being able to explore one of my first passions that is separate from politics, but with people who we share these common values. And of course, whatever someone's interest is, like you say, knitting or basketball or rucking or D&D or something much less nerdy than D&D. I don't know. Whatever that is, there's a community of people to do it with. All right. Well, I did want to ask you about something, and I know, boy, we could just keep going on at length about all of these things, but you've been involved lately with talking with liberty-loving people across the country. Of course, we're always trying to get people to pack up and move to New Hampshire, but you've been talking with groups about, you're calling it the Free Towns Project, or the free, or basically selling someone on the silver package of, if you're not yet ready to move to the Free State within your own state, maybe you could concentrate and build a free town. Tell us a little bit about that. And I know there have been critics who have said, why are you selling people on a free town strategy? Doesn't that compete with what we want them to do, which is move to the Free State? Why would you give them a path to try to achieve freedom in their own state rather than packing up and moving here? Tell us a little bit about that and respond to some of your critics.
Well, responding to critics that's just common. Hopefully we have enough people here who are serious enough that they understand entrepreneurship, and they understand that you have to break things sometimes to create bigger things. Yeah. It's so easy to kind of lazily look at something, go, I don't think that's going to work, or just complain about something. But anyway, so when I got here, I had already been sold on the concentration strategy as conceptually, theoretically sound, and that we had empirical evidence that actually demonstrated it worked, right? But the Free State Project is a project. We still need a lot more libertarians here. We're now, if you start counting, we're about 20 years in, and our estimates for how long this would take are so far off. I'm currently estimating by diffusion by diffusion models that we're kind of on a 50 year process. So we're 20 years in on 50 years. So we got another 30 years for the free state. People will complain, the free state isn't free state. I go, oh my God, you do not understand the project part of this, my friend. This is work. We are doing incredible things. But we are pushing back on hundreds of years of laws, hundreds of years of violations.
And we can measure demonstrable progress in towards our goals, whereas other strategies, people might dismiss this strategy and do one of the other strategies that has tried and failed over and over again. There is no measurable progress to measure over there, but because achieving a truly free society doesn't happen overnight, some folks will say it's not fast enough.
Yeah, I just don't understand that. I mean, we've had 6,000 years of slavery to rulers. And I'm going, what's your model that how this would work? Do you think, you'll wake up one day and you decide that people should be free? All of a sudden it happens? This is a hard process, guys. This is monumental. This is changing humanity's arc. So it is one of the biggest things that humanity could possibly ever do. And so, but anyway, so people would go, oh yeah, you guys are doing so well over there in New Hampshire. We're going to do a free state project in state X. And I go, oh my God. So I have to go through the math, right? It's a diffusion process, right? You say, well, what's the population of libertarians in the world, right? The Free State Project is pulling primarily from the U.S., but we also, some of our best people are coming from other countries. So what's the population there? And then you have to actually start scrunching it down and go, what about the people who are so serious about liberty that they'll actually migrate to build liberty, right? And so you squeeze it down, and go, okay, that population is going to take a while to actually diffuse and to migrate to a location, to the free state. Now, the models that Jason first used, I've actually pushed him on disclosing those, but I've backed into some of them. And the estimates for the total population of libertarians was very optimistic. A lot of times I'll ask people, what do you think the population is of libertarianism with the potential? You think it's 1%, 2%, 5%, 10%, 20%, 40%, 60%, 80%. And I'm always shocked when people go 60%, we can get there. I go, oh my God, talk to me in about 40 years. Okay. So the question is, what is that potential population? And now what's the target, right? So we chose a state, and we chose a state given what we thought these things were and this amount of time it would take to migrate. We were off on those estimates. And we've learned a lot. But people will say, oh, geez, I want to do it in this state, which is, 10 times the size of New Hampshire. And I go, look, we're 20 years into a 50-year process, and it's still questionable whether we can succeed. We're succeeding, but you got to come here to help us succeed. And then you want to actually diffuse us back over to this much harder thing to take a state on that's 10 times our size. Do you realize what 10 times 50 years is? And I wait for them to do the calculation, 50, you add a zero, it's 500 years. It's half a millennium. You cannot do it given what the population is. But so anyways, I spent a lot of time trying to teach. I shouldn't have to teach libertarians math. We are nerds. And so, just going, and I have to do this with other countries too. Because we'll make this country's free. I go, oh my God. Okay. Let's go through some math. But the thing is that I finally got this idea of, well, what if we just right size this, right? I think in a way we were, because we didn't have good estimates on the total population and on the speed of migration. We just didn't know what those were, right? So Jason used other variables for other migrations, and okay, well, it'll be like something like this. And we should be done by now. Boom, we're done. But we're not. And so we've learned a lot. And we need to go back and readjust those models. So what I've done is I've basically gone through, backed out what the models were, and then said, okay, what if we wanted to create a free town project within a state, right? What are the numbers that we would need? What's the number? First of all, in the state, how many libertarians do they have, and how many in that small group might actually migrate? Okay, given that we know how long migration takes, it'll be a little bit faster for a state, right? They don't have to move as far. All the complaints, I won't be able to see my mom. You can see your mom, but you will have to move. So there's going to be a process. So how can we get this down to 3 years to trigger the move, and 3 to 5 years to actually move? What we generally thought that we were going to do for New Hampshire. How do we do that? And so I've actually built some models around that, and I'm talking to different states, because if the arrogance is that, we can turn the whole world free. The truth is that we are a teeny tiny minority, a very small minority, and most authoritarians don't want to be us. They do not want to be free. They like the false security of the state. They like the pretty lies. And I say, God bless them. Good for you guys. You go do that. But I want to rescue the people who actually see the beauty of allowing human beings to be free. I want them to be able to experience liberty in their lifetime. Now, they can't do it as well as we can do in a state, right? Because in a state, we're basically nullifying things that are federal. In a town, you have to nullify things that are county and state and federal. And you're going to have to be very judicious in which areas you're going to nullify and how you're going to get around their enforcement. Okay, good. We'll work through those. But if we right size this and you target a town that actually you can take over, and when I say take over, you have from dog catcher up to mayor, right? You take the zoning, you take the land planning board, you take the finance, you take the school board. So you take the police department, the sheriff, right? So you actually control that one small little area. And so much of your freedom is actually affected by local stuff. And so I think that you can actually, and once you have that, it becomes this vibrant center of freedom in your state. It becomes that magnet where other people start coming to, and you can have lessons and start expanding that. But until you have one, you cannot do two. So I keep on telling people, when they go, working with some people in a state I won't mention, but they have a good shot at a town. It fits the numbers, given the size of their state. It fits the numbers. It's already kind of liberty. It's looking good. And they go, and almost immediately they go, yeah, and then we're going to do this one at the same time. I go, no. Guys, focus here. This is called concentration strategy. I can't get them to understand there's math involved here. I go, count with me very slowly to 2. And they'll go, 1. I go, stop. So what did you need to do before you got to 2? What did you need to do? Oh God, I shouldn't have to do this with libertarians. I have to do it with libertarians too, though, because we are in this idea that everybody's just like us. And I think that I asked libertarians, I say, when has it been that people said, oh yeah, you're just like everybody else, Joe?
Hey, Dennis, in a moment, we're going to be approaching our heart out in just a few minutes. So I've got to give you the last word to wrap things up. And I hope that as you are selling people on this free town idea, that some of them are getting the idea that, this concentration strategy is pretty interesting, but maybe they want the premium package.
Yeah, well, you can certainly do a lot more in a state than you can for a town. But I want to set it up so that you can win also. If you really can't leave your state, I mean,
Yeah.
I think you should. I mean, as long as you're packing up, take the U-Haul a couple states over and move here. We already have the infrastructure. We're already building infrastructure. We have groups that will welcome you in. The things that you're excited about, you can do. If it's not here, build it, and they will come. And it's a vibrant, very exciting time. Building your own town is it's a lot harder. It's a lot harder. But what it does, I think, is it gives you a little bit of humility as to the size of creating real liberty in the world. And I think I would like to see 49 little areas of freedom all around the United States. And I've actually talked to people in another country, and have a little speck of freedom there. And we can actually start interconnecting and start doing things together.
I guess we'll have to set up some send some ambassadors and maybe set up some what's it called?
Zoom me in.
Set up embassies in the various free towns across America.
Well, zoom me in. I will talk to any group of any states or country that's interested in this. We can go through the mathematical models. I can tell you what we did well and what we failed to do. I have a all list of how where we screwed up. I'll be totally open kimono with you guys.
All right, Dennis, you got. I'm going to give you the last 10 seconds, and we gotta.
Then I've got. Well, and if you don't zoom, and if you zoom in or not, come out and visit. Come to the Independence Inn. I'll give you half price off of a week stay. You can go and find the different groups and meet with different people.
Where can people find the Independence Inn? Is there a website?
You should contact me directly, because if you go to the inn, it's the Independence Inn in New Hampshire, the Independence Inn. But contact me through Twitter, Dennis Pratt Free, and just tell me when you're coming, and I'll work that through with you, because you need a little code and stuff like that. This is not available to non-liberty people.
Awesome. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you for being my guest today. And I will say, the Independence Inn, I've been there. It's wonderful. They've got a great restaurant, great facilities, and it's centrally located in New Hampshire. So if you are planning a visit to New Hampshire, the Independence Inn is a wonderful place to stay. Literally, you can drive an hour in any direction to get to FSP events or just see beautiful sights around New Hampshire. Great landing place for a visit to New Hampshire. All right, everyone, we are running short on time. So my last promo for PorcFest is going to be really quick. Get your tickets, porcfest.com. That's pork with a C, not a K. Get your tickets while they last. We're just a few weeks away now. Come see me. Come see Dennis. Come see all of your great Liberty friends that you will that will all be gathered together in one place in Lancaster, New Hampshire this June. All right, everyone. That's the show. Thank you for joining us. Thank you so much, as always, to our technical producer, Raynita, for operating this episode behind the scenes, making us all look and sound so good. Furthermore, my opinion is the Federal Reserve should be destroyed. I'll see you all next week.